Josh Cooperman, and this is Convo by Design. Today on the show, you are going to hear from Roberta Mantenuto, CEO of Fitz, formerly RA Event, and sometimes, the biggest changes come from changing the smallest details. This is one of those occasions, to me at least. Fitz is the Canadian company revolutionizing the vent and register business, as well as a couple other products. They created a modular air vent. And you know what I love most about this? For the longest time, we just used what we had available. Contractor grade from the big box, or perhaps a boutique brand that made the same style of vent, right? But with nicer finishes. But Fitz now has a full line of framed and flush mount covers, vents, outlets, and drains. It's a simple idea. And that's what I love most about this story. I sat down with Roberta, CEO and co-founder of Fitz, and daughter of company co-founder and inventor, Paolo. One of the biggest parts of this story is in the simplicity of the idea. Another is the elegant execution of the concept. The third idea is this scaling up and recent name change to stay current. The final piece for me is the story of a father-daughter duo making something amazing happen and executing on this simple idea in a very big way. It's pretty cool, and I think you're going to love it. You're going to hear my conversation with Roberta Mantenuto right after this. I am incredibly proud of Convo by Design in year 10, and I'm equally proud of my partnership with Thermosol. They've been presenting partners of Convo by Design for 3 years now, and there is a certain amount of pride that comes with saying that the show is presented by the company that is the best in the world at what they do. Thermosol engineers the most exceptional smart shower products and steam shower systems worldwide for a few reasons. They were the first company to design, patent the technology here in the U.S. dating back to 1958. Thermosol, a U.S. brand, a U.S. manufacturer in Round Rock, Texas, employs an engineering team that designs, tests, and continuously refines the product. Their quality control team tests every single steam generator before it departs the factory. Who else does that? Nobody. I have had the pleasure of working with some world-class designers and architects who tell me, and you probably know this, that the idea of luxury has changed and continues to change, especially when clients want a spa-like bathroom. Steam is mandatory, or it's just not considered a luxury space. And if you want to add steam, you have one true option. It's Thermosol. And now, Thermosol, the industry leader in steam, bath equipment, and technology since 1958, is enhancing their already stellar family of products with new indoor and outdoor luxury saunas. Available in 3 design configurations, each sauna is handcrafted from clear Western red cedar or Nordic spruce, inspired by the brilliance of Northern European sauna technology and design. A luxury bathroom isn't luxury without steam. If you want luxury, you have one option. It's Thermosol. Check them out at thermosol.com and at Thermosol on the socials. Your company makes me happy. And I will tell you first and foremost why is the idea of I'm a girl dad. And so the idea of a father-daughter company is very, very cool to me. The second part of that is the products that you make are very, very cool to me. Paolo, your dad solved a problem. And yes. I kind of want to back up a little bit. Do me a favor. Tell me the story. Tell me the company. You guys started in 2016, but it solves a couple of different problems in design that, to be quite honest with you, have existed since forever. And I was today years old. I mean, theoretically, when I learned about RA Event and what you guys do and how you solve this problem. And I think it's very cool.
Yeah. I mean, I'll give you the story from my perspective, but if you ask my dad, he might have a little bit of a different version of the story.
Okay.
So I'll take it all the way back. My parents used to own a stone fabricating company. So I grew up in the office. I worked for them, every summer in high school and university. And so I was very familiar with like the nuances of a family business. And I got to a point after university that I thought there's absolutely no way that I'm going to continue working for my parents. I didn't go to school to do the same job I was doing when I was 14. And so I was very resistant to the idea of working with them. So I went traveling. I was kind of in a place after school. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I actually thought I wanted to be in interior design. And while I was on that trip, my dad sent me this email and he said, I think I've got something here. I've reinvented the vent. He sent me a photo of this like preliminary prototype made of tin and duct tape and all these things. Said, I think I have something here. When you get home, I think he literally said, you have nothing going for you. Why don't you help me launch this brand? And he was right. I had nothing going for me. I thought, okay, I'll set him up. And he said he really wanted to put it on an online store. He was fascinated with Amazon. This was 7 years ago. Amazon was very different than it is today. And I thought, okay, let's do this. So it was really just meant to be like our little weekend project. We never thought it was going to be the company it became today. We started operating out of a 10 by 10 storage locker. Then we moved to a 10 by 15. And then we actually got a warehouse. And the whole, I would say first 2 years, I kept telling my dad, I don't want to work for you. I will help you set this up and then I'm going to go do something else. And he just, kept leaving breadcrumbs thinking, okay, maybe we should do some packaging. And those things always excited me, right? Brand, like thoughtful brands really excited me. We might need some social media, just help me set it up. And 7 years later, here we are.
That is great. Okay. So the idea of the vent goes back 100 years. Mm-hmm. And, it's always been the same. So this idea that the vent, and listen, I know that there have been minor modifications and certain changes along the way, but not like this. This is a wholesale change. This is tantamount to, in the bathroom, I remember the first time I saw this idea of an invisible drain, in a shower. And I thought, gosh, I love, there are decorative drains and some like the decorative drain. Others love the idea of it being an invisible drain, but they have a choice.
Right.
And whereas in the past, the choice didn't really exist, that aha moment for the company, talk to me about scaling up. So you manufacture in Canada and it's been 7 years. It's not like it's been 70 years. So it's still a relatively new company and you have to still be learning along the way. But I'm curious about the design process, the scaling up in extremely trying times. I mean, let's be honest, the company really, you started in 2016, whether you wanted to or not. March of 2020, you had to reevaluate what you were doing, how you were going to get it, how you were going to manufacture, how you were going to distribute, who your clientele was going to be. And now, and by the way, Roberta, I know I'm throwing a ton at you.
No, it's all good.
But I'm curious from the business side, because you've done it quickly and the product really is from a specification standpoint, it's a game changer. It really changes things up. How did you do that?
Well, there's Rosie. So I mean, in terms of the product development, that's all my dad. I don't take any responsibility for that. Basically, how he came up with the idea was out of a customer need at their other company, right? Before we used to water jet stone slabs, and that would be, the customized version of a tile vent. So he had this particular project where there was a lot of vents. It was a penthouse suite, and there was vents all across the front of the windows. And he said, hold on, let me come up with a better idea, a better solution for you. So he came up with this iteration of the vent. And, of course, from that point, from the idea to the point that he presented it to the customer, there was about 100 different iterations. At one point, he thought he made a humidifier. He put a little baggie inside of the tray in our vent. And, he showed my family and he's like, I think I made a humidifier. And my mom was like, there's 2 ounces of water that can fit in that tray. Nobody needs a humidifier like that. Like, are you crazy? And so then he put a piece of stone and said, okay, wait, what about this? Does this look good? And so, being in the stone industry, we really get exposed to a lot of people who are trying to solve design problems. And he noticed that there was a gap in the market, that we had evolved so far with so much technology, but for some reason, we were all still settling with these ugly grills. You can design your whole home, and then you have that ugly vent that's just sticking on the wall. And, you know, my dad has always been an inventor. He's come up with so many different things throughout his whole life. It was not weird to me to get an email from him saying, like, I have discovered this new thing. I get that very often. So, you know, he really saw a niche and a need in the market. And what happened was, the time that we started 7 years ago, I mean, it's always just like a combination of perfect timing, and if you call it luck or whatever, but it was perfect timing in the sense that 7 years ago, designers, contractors, architects, they really started to leverage Instagram as a way to generate business and demand and show people their work to get new business. And so we joined Instagram pretty much from the jump. Our product was incredibly visual and beautiful. That's the whole selling point of it. And so people would buy it because they wanted to post interesting content. And this caused like a lot of conversation. What is that thing? Is it a drain? Is it like very confused? We actually started first as an e-com brand because we knew that nobody was going to take us seriously. We had to prove to everybody that there was a product market fit. And we were able to do that through generating this demand on Instagram. And what people would do is they would buy our products through our online store. They would share their experience on social media. And then they would also share their experience with their supplier. Contracts are at, you know, tile shops multiple times a week, and they'd say, hey, I've been buying this stuff online. Can you please start carrying it? And that opened up our second business channel, which is B2B. So we still sell online. And then we also sell to specialized retailers like flooring, tile stores, hardware stores, big box like Home Depot, Ace Hardware, things like that. So these two sales channels have really started to feed in each other. And then, of course, all of this is possible because our products have a utility patent, which means that no one can sell anything that looks or functions remotely like our vents. So we've kind of insulated ourselves in a way that, you know, has just set us up for success in many ways. And it's funny that you bring up March 2020. We were terrified, just like everybody else. You know, nobody knew what was going on. But we actually had an incredible year in 2020, and we benefited a lot from people staying at home, working from home, looking at their ugly vents, wanting to do like home projects. Yeah, we definitely, again, we're very lucky. I would say COVID may have helped us in a lot of ways.
You know, what's funny to me, it more in an ironic way is people are reticent to say, you know, that it's kind of a sense of guilt, I think, that their company benefited or they personally benefited from the pandemic, right? Mm-hmm. And I get that. I really do. I feel the same way because, look, I have a podcast and the show benefited immensely from people being stuck at home with nothing else to do. You know, I had a catalog of content, and people discovered the show, and then they went back and watched years and years of content. I benefited as well. And at first I remember thinking, you know, that can't be a good thing. And then I started thinking about it. And, you know, we're going to look back at this opportunity and we're going to celebrate at some point, celebrate the inventors and celebrate the producers and celebrate the people who made things during this time, because it's going to forever transform the state of design, the nature of design. What you guys have done is really interesting. And I want you to walk me through the product line a little bit, because it's not just vents. This idea of niches and recessed opportunities for plugs and for thermostats and for, you know, for outlets and for benches that go in a shower and the braces. I'm also excited to sort of hear how you think about this idea of recessed opportunities. The vent is one opportunity. The other things that you guys are doing, it kind of opens up a creative avenue for brand extensions and additional product lines. How do you think about that? At the same time, you're a small business. You talk about scaling up, but you really have to be more careful than someone who's got 100 or even 1,000 SKUs putting out product all the time. You got to do a little more market research. You got to do a little more. Is this a viable product before you invest resources in that? How do you evaluate new product? How do you test new product in the marketplace with specifying designers to see if it's something that'll latch on? And what does the R&D process look like internally within the company?
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. We started as a vent company. In fact, when we launched our first product, we didn't even name it anything. We just named it the Aria Vent. And then once we launched the second product, I thought, Dad, I think we need to rename the first one, or else this is going to be confusing. So very earnestly, we did not think that this was going to become anything. And so, in the past, I would say 5 years, we started to really think, okay, we're an innovative company. What else can we do? Can we really add on any more to vents other than sizes and colors? And we really started to consider and think, well, the treatment that we did to the vent, we challenged the status quo of its form, and we changed the way it looked and how people see them. Can we do that with other products that nobody has thought about yet? And so the ethos of our brand and of all of our products is just reimagining mundane, unloved building products. So anything in your home that you've been told by a contractor and they say that needs to be there, we need to have the sprinkler in, we need to have the light switch there. Like, just there's core functions of an interior home that need to have these gadgets and apparatuses. We want to be able to challenge the way that we see them and that the way that they're installed and how they're incorporated in the rest of the design. There shouldn't have to be sacrifices. We're so focused now as a culture of just refining everything, and everyone's taking such care and time in every item that's going into their home, the utility, the final look of it. I mean, just look at what's happened with toasters, in the past 8 years. Like, toasters are beautiful machines now. They used to be just like, these ugly boxes that had to sit on the counter. So why can't we do that with light switches? Why can't we take advantage of that space and turn it into a real experience to make the design more cohesive? So that's really what we're looking at. And for us, we are really focused on, well, what other decisions is the buyer making at the time that they're also buying vents? Right? So they're probably making decisions on their light switches, maybe niches if they're at the drywalling stage, and really taking advantage of the cavities in the wall. The way we build our houses, there's a nice gap inside of the wall. Why aren't we using that and optimizing that space, especially as our homes get smaller and smaller? That could be an opportunity, an advantage there. The R&D team, everything that they do, it's really interesting because we have such a strong connection with the end user and primarily contractors who are installing our products over and over again. We use them. We have their information. They buy from us online. They follow us on Instagram. We ask them, hey, what other stuff is really hard for you to install or creates friction between you and another trade? How can we solve a problem on the job site? Keep in mind, my parents, their company as a stone fabricator, they were the last trade on the site every time. So all of the drama that had happened throughout the build, they took the brunt of it at the end. And so that's a big problem. And we want to create products that can solve for that. So really looking at ease of install, things that are easy to carry inventory for our retail partners. They don't want 100 SKUs. They want to simplify the SKUs. They want to be able to have high inventory turnover. How can we make modular products that can be applied in many different circumstances and then look better? Ultimately, we want them to function and then also look better for the homeowner. So they go through an intense R&D process. Product development can take literally anywhere from 3 months to 3 years. We have a 3D printer in our office that is running pretty much 24/7 nonstop, just coming up with new products. And, this year we've made a commitment. If we really want to be an innovative company, we need to be putting out innovative products. So every month this year, we are launching at least one new product. Some months it's multiple. And we're doing a big push for new stuff. And a lot of this stuff, because we haven't had resources, was actually invented and developed years ago that just now we have the ability to bring to market.
Gosh, there's so much there to unpack. A couple of things. First, I will tell you this: if I could do business with anybody as it relates to pairing craftsmanship and skill with problem solving, it would be a highly skilled stone fabricator. It would be, because I will tell you something. I have been on so many projects, and some of these things. What's really interesting about it too. If done correctly, nobody ever really notices what the fabricator did. Yeah. And I have seen so many projects where it's like, wow, that waterfall. How did they get the veining to fall off the edge the way that they did? How did they get the book match on that piece of granite or that piece of marble to look that way? Or how did they craft that design? Almost like a barista who can craft a flower in the foam on a cappuccino, right? I kind of envision it, that same artistry that a well-skilled fabricator does. And they're kind of like the ones, like you said, they're the last in, and it's like, no, you can't say no to this. You just have to do it, and you have to do it right, and you have to go figure it out. It's problem solving in real time. And there's such a skill and a gift to that. And especially today, where it's just easier to walk away than to stick with it. And I don't mean to like take a shot at any particular generation, but you're smiling because you know where I'm kind of going with it.
It's going to be a millennial thing.
No. You know what's funny? We're totally shifting gears, but it's funny that you say that. It's not necessarily a millennial thing, because I remember, like, so the show is 10 years old. And I remember years and years ago, I want to say it was probably like, I don't know, 2015, 2016. There were all, every panel at the design centers or every design event, it was, how do we reach millennials? How do we talk to millennials about design? What do millennials want? How do we get them to specify our product? How do we get them to buy our product? What do they buy? What do they want? And it took some time for people to realize, but millennials, I think, have come up, they're really responsible for this concept, generationally speaking, as it relates to design, where it was like, okay, millennials don't want to fill their house with all of this beautifully gorgeous, expensive material. They want something, be it a bureau or a buffet or a watch or sneakers or a car or a scooter. They want something that is important to them. Be it beautiful, be it expensive, be it whatever it is, there's a narrative behind it. There's a story. And then this idea of really adhering to this high-low mix idea, where then you take that one idea and you surround it with so many other things that are of importance to you that play off this one idea or this one object. That concept to me is really fantastic, because it helps further the narrative in design and it creates a story. What I mean, though, is through social media, and it's not generational. I think we can give the boomers a pass on this one. We can kind of let them, but be it Gen X, Gen Z, Gen Y, millennials, there's this idea that when things get tough, it's somehow okay to walk away from it. Yeah. Like, my life is too important. I'd rather be happy than right. I'm just going to walk away from this idea. There are also those individuals who stick with it, who dig in and say, you know what, I'm going to solve this problem. And I think the two camps are really well defined. So I come back to you guys and how you solve a problem. And I want to kind of go backwards a little bit to something that you said, this original idea that it's Paolo, right? Your dad?
Yeah.
So Paolo came up with this original idea of making a humidifier out of it. Now, I asked the question, and sorry, it's a long-winded question, but I asked the question because I'm doing a design house in Tulsa, and I'm from Southern California. So in Southern California, I didn't have beach community. I had no issues with humidity or changes in humidity as it relates to that. When we moved to the Midwest, which is Tulsa, and you're in summertime where it's 90 degrees with 60%, 70%, 80% humidity, or winter where it's 10 degrees with 5% humidity, it wreaks absolute havoc on everything from the flooring to the furniture to everything. Mm-hmm. When you look at an idea and you shift away from this, well, it can only hold 2 ounces of water or something like that. Do you ever, and you talk about these new products, which were actually ideated and envisioned years ago. What does your idea board look like as far as here's the concept, here's the product, here's the release? How do we put it in order? How do you look at that, especially considering that there are so many ideas that Paulo has on the board? How do you prioritize? How do you distribute?
I mean, if you were to ask my dad this question, he would take everything to market. Like right away, we would have already had 300 products. It's really me who's pumping the brakes because I think just to your point, you know, the market, people really want stuff that's meaningful and makes sense. And I think the main motivator behind each of our products is it solving a problem? And in solving the problem, is it creating other problems that's going to make things harder? It needs to make things easier all the time. So even, for instance, our receptacle mounts, yes, if you're comparing between a regular receptacle mount and ours is more complicated, right? But it's apples and oranges. Same thing as our vents. Yeah, you need to cut a piece of your material and put it in there. But when you compare it to other customized vent solutions or other flush mount receptacles, those flush mount receptacles are very expensive. They are very complicated to install. It takes collaboration between the drywall finisher and the electrician, and they don't typically, you know, like to kumbaya. And so we needed a product that could make things easier for the installation and then also have a finished look that is somewhat elevated without the sacrifice of the cost, the time, and, you know, the challenges on a job site. So that's really what we're looking towards. Really, for the product, my dad and his product team, what they're looking at is, you know, you can do this yourself now. You just look around your house and in the room that you're in and see anything that's hanging off the wall that you've just ignored your whole life and really start questioning, does that need to be there? Why haven't we come up with a better solution for frameless baseboards or curtains or, you know, the little box for your doorbell that hangs off in your foyer? Like, why are we still allowing that to happen? And really seeing, okay, can we improve it without adding extra complications? And do people even want to improve it? And a lot of times they do, they just don't know that there's another solution. And so, you know, all of those things are kind of what excite us. And this is the most beautiful thing about our brand and our company is we start to realize when people get it, when we start to hear from them like, hey, ever since we spoke, I literally can't stop staring at my vents. They aggravate me. Or, you know, people will send us like screenshots of movies or, you know, very famous people that have ugly vents in their background and be like, how Kim Kardashian built, you know, a beautiful house. And for some reason she has those ugly grills. And that just proves the point further. And this like, I don't know, this like virality to the brand and to the ethos of it is just start questioning everything and not, you know, not having to sacrifice the final look of things. I think there's just a lot that can be done.
You are listening to my chat with Fitz Company co-founder and CEO, Roberta Mantenuto. We'll be right back. Design Hardware's newly remodeled showroom is where you will find a gallery-style space with a thoughtful display of products, purposefully positioned to allow unbridled exploration and discovery. High-end faucets, luxury tile, natural stone, wood floors, and bespoke hardware selections are presented in a holistic manner, strategically arranged to stimulate creativity and transition your vision from the conceptual stage to a fully realized space. Conveniently located, free parking available. Stop by to find your inspiration. Collect samples, get expert advice, and tackle everything on your shopping list all in one place. Visit them online at designhardware.com or in the real world, 6053 West 3rd Street in Los Angeles. The Institute of Classical Architecture and Art Southern California chapter is a forum for professionals in the industry and enthusiasts to come together, share their love, and show their commitment to the timeless principles of beauty, proportion, and observation that are embodied in classicism. Their members include renowned architects, designers, landscape architects, builders, students, artists, and creatives from every walk of life. It's a wonderful organization designed to celebrate the unique regional identity of Southern California and help develop the careers of the like-minded. If you're interested in joining or would like to learn more about sponsorship and support for the ICAA Southern California chapter, please email me, convobydesign@outlook.com. Listen, because so many of the listeners to the podcast are in the trade, designers, architects, because they're specifiers, you have the e-commerce platform, you have your distributors. How do you speak to specifiers? How do you reach the community? That's a vastly different conversation.
Yeah. So initially when we launched, our idea was exactly that. We need to talk to the architects and designers. They need to be specifying the product. And then the contractor at the end of the project is just going to have to suck it up and install it. But in the meantime, because we had such a good connection in our community with tile and flooring stores, my dad and I went to all of them and just left a display on the contractor desk and told the owners, hey, you don't need to buy this product. We're just really curious to understand the feedback that we get from the contractors. And I would say a couple weeks after, we started getting calls like, hey, what is this thing on the counter? Are you just left your business card. Can we buy some? A contractor came in and wants to buy it. And so from the get, contractors and final installers are really the ones that have been pushing the brand forward, and they will actually bring it to the site. And then the designer will see it and be like, okay, yeah, I like that. Let's go for it. Right. Because they have a care of their craft, and innovative products is not something that happens often in that industry. So they get excited when there's something new that they can try out and test and, challenge themselves to see, if it works. And so just, I would say in the past year and a half, that's when we really started to get traction at the top of the decision-making ladder with architects and designers. And just now they've really caught on. You'll notice that we don't sell direct to architects and designers. We sell through those two channels. And that was intentional because we saw the trend towards direct to consumer very early on. Besides that, it was a necessity to prove product market fit. We thought if no one's going to take us seriously, we're not going to wait till a decision maker decides that we're good enough to include on a project. We'll do it ourselves so that we can prove to them that we're there. And so, yeah, architects and designers definitely a part of the market that we don't speak to directly. And that's in part of our business model because we can't sell to them directly. Will that change? I'm not sure. That the US market's very different than the Canadian one. And so we're still trying to get our footing to understand the nuances of decision making and these projects in the US. It's definitely different than Canada. I'll be honest, the Canadian market's quite simple to figure out. It's very clear cut. And I've been learning very quickly that the US is of course very regional, but also there's a lot more vertical integration in the sourcing of products and then the decision making. So yeah, that's an opportunity for us.
What does that look like to you? What have you learned about the US market? And by the way, I will tell you, being a native Angelino from Los Angeles, now in the Midwest, LA is different regionally, from the beach cities to the valley, to the desert, to the Inland Empire. It's very, very different. You get to the Midwest, Oklahoma should be a different country. not just a different state. It is basically the difference between Calgary and Toronto. I mean,
Yes.
it is that different, right? So how do you navigate the differences? How do you scale up not product or distribution, but the actual, it's a different language. Like how do you do that, considering that it's so vastly different? And what percentage of, is the US the target market, or is international the target market? And then how do you have to reintegrate your products for other markets? Does everyone have different sizes, and how do you adapt?
Yeah. So, I mean, the first thing I'll tell you, any Canadian company, they're always going for the US. The US market is 10 times bigger than the Canadian market. We have maybe like 5 major cities, and that's like stretching it. The US, you guys just have so much more of everything, cities, people, like everything. So it's a beast. And anyone who's in Canada, we test it out here all the time, and then we slowly trickle into the US and approach it that way. Canada is not regional. You can find one distributor partner that goes coast to coast, super simple. It's also, again, it's very big, but the majority of the population, I don't know what the percentage is, but I believe it's close to over 90% of the population lives between about 100 miles from the US border. So it's very concentrated in terms of population. It's right there. The Canadian market is also faster to adapt to innovation and new products. With the exception of LA and I think New York, they're a little bit faster, but everyone else is probably 10 to 15 years behind. And so, yeah, sometimes getting them to even appreciate the modern look of the product, for them, they're still installing, I want to say travertine floors, but now travertine is having a resurgence. So that's not that's okay. I'll say, well, terracotta as well is having a bit of a resurgence, but you know what I mean? Like they're still a little bit delayed. And it's very obvious, especially when we go to, trade shows and things like that. So there's an advantage there. And a lot of US companies that have presence in Canada, like Home Depot, for instance, they actually use Home Depot Canada as a breeding ground to see what's going to be coming down the pipeline in terms of new products in the next 10 years. And so it actually is an advantage to be in Canada because you have early adopters here that is an excellent market for proof of concept and then to enter the US market. For us in particular in Canada, again, very simple. We have about 2 sizes of vents, maybe like 4 if you include the big air returns in the US. Every market, every region has their own standard size. And that brought our SKU count. We saw immediately, if we want to enter the US, we need to have I think 15 different sizes of product. And so that was really challenging. And it was a bit of a slow burn for us to, okay, what area we want to target next? California, right? What vent sizes do they have in California? Let's make those first, because we know that they're going to be faster to adapt than a place, for instance, like Oklahoma. And then, of course, you have different climates. So I'm not sure where you are, what it would be like, but in Canada, we have basements. So all of our vents are on the floor. But in LA, for instance, you do not typically have basements. You will have vents in the walls and ceilings. So that's where our wall vent came out. We have, a drywall beaded wall vent. We really made that for the US market. In Canada, we can only really use those in basements because our vents are in the ceiling in the basement. And so just because of sheer volume, we do a lot more drywall vent products because there's just more demand in the US. And so there's those nuances. So, our big distributor in Canada, we do very well in the flooring sector, but in the US, you might have to go more towards the drywall vertical. They might have more success because that's just how it is. So yeah, the US is the big, target. And that would be the same for every Canadian company, I imagine.
And just putting a bow on this, I think one of the things that I find so wonderful about the product is that it's not just the vent itself. And I do want to ask you about the functionality of, covering the majority of the space, the actual airflow with material to add to the design, does that impinge upon the efficacy of the product itself? Curious about that. But the idea too, that you're looking at the niche, the space between the studs, behind the drywall as an opportunity. I just don't think that space has been, sure, wall safes, I get it. There are other products that utilize that space, but it just seems like territory within a home that hasn't been explored fully. And that's why I think it's so great. But back to the efficacy of the product, how does that affect it? And is there airflow drop because of that, or is it rerouted?
Yeah. So the airflow is comparable to regular grill vents. As you get bigger in the sizes, there is a bit of an airflow loss. What I've learned, and I've learned a lot more about HVAC than I ever thought I would in my whole life, is that the efficiency of your system really has more to do with the design of your system than at the vent that's at the end of the duct. So if you are living in a tract home or, like a mass-produced home, typically those homes are built for scale and for mass. And a lot of the times they make sacrifices in costs, and HVAC systems are very inefficient. So for example, us in Canada, you will always have a room. If you're not in a custom built home, you will always have a room in the home that's very cold and always a room that's very hot. And the balance of the system is not excellent because of, a myriad of different reasons. So really the best way to use our product is to include it in the build stage and to incorporate it and spec it at the time that you're designing the HVAC system to ensure that there is compatibility. We've sold, I think last August, we sold our 1 millionth vent, which was a big milestone for us. And we rarely, I would almost say never, get complaints about loss of airflow, but there are some nuances. For instance, high velocity system require high velocity airflow vents. So we make all of our products and we get them all third party tested to test for airflow. We make all of that information available on our website, and we always advise to check with your HVAC specialist to make sure that our products are compatible with the system that they've built and designed. And in some cases, that means you might have to add a second duct. It depends. Like every room, it requires a different CFM. And when it comes to customized air registers, people will always question ours because the form is very different. But if you look at the custom wood stain ones, for instance, nobody questions their airflow. And in fact, a lot of those companies don't even do the third-party testing or share that information with the decision makers. And if you take a look at those vents, they actually also have airflow restrictions. So for us, our approach is let's just be transparent. Let's do the testing, make it available, and ultimately check with the HVAC specialists. We in no way present ourselves as HVAC specialists. And because the answer to your question is so nuanced, it ultimately becomes the decision maker that can actually see all the nuances on the job site.
So let's talk about that for a second. So you have decision maker, which is ultimately in many cases homeowner, which is who you seem to target. So you're dual path. So you're targeting homeowner and you're targeting builder, contractor. It's interesting to me. So this designer architect, because that is the majority of the people that I speak to, and it's really interesting to me because nowadays it has become far more difficult for specifiers to get information, to get proper samples, to get, and when I say proper samples, I mean, products change so quickly. I think what we saw during, middle to end of pandemic to even where we are now is the lifespan of a SKU has shrunk. You'll have some companies with products on the market for decades. One product, the way it is, the same product will sell for decades. Nowadays, discontinuation is part of the business. You'll have, if it's not selling great, we're not going to relaunch it. We're not going to try to figure out why. We're just going to pull it and put something else out there. I think that's a disservice in many cases to the industry, because there's a litany of reasons why that might happen. But I think, like you mentioned, this opportunity, this narrow window of reaching the specifier comes with a lot more education. So it sounds like you've done the work on the R&D side, and then on the testing and efficacy to prove efficiency side. So how do you teach about the product? And isn't that one of the hardest parts about doing something new, is that, gosh, now we got to teach everyone about it. We can't just put out something new and beautiful and wonderful and say, look, it works, just go buy it and use it. But now you have to teach them how to use it. Yeah. That's a different, and I bring it up because that's a different arm of the business. How do you do that?
Yeah, so I mean, we're quite lucky that a lot of our products are pretty intuitive, and actually speaking to the technical people in terms of the contractors and having them really pushing us forward has been a huge advantage, because they get things a lot faster. They're more technical than a homeowner, for instance, so they kind of understand exactly what it is. The installation process is pretty simple. We've actually developed 2 different lines of products. Every time we come out with a new product, we make a DIY friendly version that usually requires like the use of a drill. And if you're installing the floor, you still need a saw to cut the piece of flooring material. And then we also have a more pro, or a little bit more challenging install. So that usually requires mounting things at the subfloor, before the flooring is in, or drywall mudding, for instance. That's not like as DIY friendly. And so by having these 2 arms, we're able to simplify the product to get access to that homeowner or that weekend warrior if they choose to do that installation, and then really get like a ultra high-end finish with the more flush options that require a pro installation. Educating the customer, I mean, our best tool is really Instagram, and we're very fortunate that the majority of the content that we get on Instagram is actually user generated. So people get very excited about the products, especially contractors and installers, and they videotape it and post it, and then we reshare it. And you can see like all the possible use cases. We usually get blown away ourselves with how people really interact with it on our social media. And that, once you see it, like you see the vent before, you see the vent after, it's very clear as day as like what the value add that the product is. It's funny, the first time we went to KBIS, like 2018 maybe, my dad and I were sitting in front of our booth. We had like a beautiful booth set up, and all of like our vents were installed on the walls, and like people just walking by, like not paying much attention. It's like, Dad, they're not stopping. And he's like, I think they just don't get what it is. So that night we went to a Home Depot, we got an ugly grill vent, and then we started holding those and being like, this is this. And people immediately started catching on. And then our booth was packed for the rest of the show. I'm like, okay, now we need the grill. And funny enough, this year that we went to IBS, we thought we were going to need that. And it had been like maybe 2 years, obviously, since we'd done a trade show. I would say 95 people that came to our booth knew who we were and knew what the product was. And there was no need to have that ugly grill vent there, because they just got it and they had seen us before. So that was pretty remarkable to see. And on top of that, when we were at that show, we had all of those attendees talking back to us, our value proposition and our brand voice and our messaging. And they were telling us that stuff. And I said, you know what, that is really proof that something is resonating here. There's excellent product market fit. And I think once you have that, everything else comes a lot easier. Getting people to buy into the idea, buying into the brand, being open to adopting new products that aren't vents. It's all easier once you have that product market fit.
That's really interesting. As a brand marketer, I love that, where it's you showed them the after and they didn't get it. Then you show them the before and it's like, oh, light bulb, imaginary light bulb. All right.
Yeah.
So that's fascinating to me. I have kind of an odd question for you. And last one, this is the perfect one to kind of wrap this up. something you said has been kind of bouncing around in my head since you said it. And that is that the idea of a standard HVAC system is completely inefficient. And huh?
I didn't say that. I said that they could be very inefficient.
Sorry.
Don't have all the HVAC people coming after me now.
No. Hear me out. Let me back up a second, because I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. I'm kind of going somewhere with this because I have a thought. You're right. It's not the byproduct of an HVAC system. It's a byproduct of the fact that you can't build a system that fits everything when every final product is always unique and different in at least one way or another. It's impossible. You can't come up with the perfect system, because if you said to me, every home is going to be 2,500 square feet, here's the footprint of the home, here's the material it's made out of, here's how we seal off every window and door, here's how we keep it completely airtight, and then you go back to an HVAC system and you say, okay, here's where the ducting is going to be installed, here's where the vents are going to be, here's where the thermostat's going to be, here's where the sun rises, here's where the sun sets, here's your zone, here's your humidity level. I get that. And I'm not putting this off on HVAC industry. What I'm saying is it's impossible to achieve perfection because every product is different. Can we stipulate to that? Is that a fair? Okay. So saying that, one of the things that I started thinking about when you said that is, does that make you start thinking more? Does that start making Paolo think more? Does that start making your R&D team think more about the technology behind what you do as it comes to products that you launch in the next 5 years? Will there be a automated vent with its own internal motors and drivers that works? You're smiling because you're like, oh, don't even go there. But I'm just curious, because with the advent of AI, right, and machine learning, everybody is focusing so heavily on what can Midjourney do for imagery and what can ChatGPT do for content, so that I don't have to write content anymore. I can write my blog. Right. That is not, I'm in the midst of a course through MIT on AI and machine learning. And what I think is fascinating is how it's going to change our industry. You can take a vent company, for example, if we know one, you could take a vent company, for example, that installs drivers into their vents, which works each room independently off a brain. You're machine learning, so you're feeding data into an algorithm that feeds the machine, and those data basically say, okay, so this room is 70 degrees, this room is 80 degrees, this room is 60 degrees. So it can automatically, the thermostat judges the flow, but each vent thinks independently and serves that room differently. Some open to 90% and some close to 50%. I'm wondering if you think that the technology in something like the vent catches up with concepts like that.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and it's definitely conversations that we've been having. I don't like to never say never, because again, like 10 years ago, if you told me I'd be here, I'd say you're crazy. So it's always a possibility, and that stuff really excites us. I think where we start to think of is, maybe we're not the ones responsible for building that motor, but how can we prepare our products so that they can be modular and take an apparatus like that would work that way. It's actually funny you're saying this, because, and I don't know very much detail, but I was speaking with someone recently, and they told me that they had somewhat of a smart HVAC system that did something similar to what you're explaining. It auto adjusts and rebalances each room of exactly what you need. So like that extra guest room that no one's ever in, redirects that airflow to, the other bedrooms that are always hot, something like that. And it's quite interesting. And I think, the more we're able to create efficiencies, the better. I mean, that's exactly what the market is demanding. We want convenience, we want efficiency. Everyone's very aware of the cost of electricity and things like that. What's also interesting is that, and this is like blew my mind. As consumers, we're used to having dampers on our vents, right? But if you ask any HVAC person, they hate the dampers on the vents because when they leave your home, they've balanced the whole home to work efficiently. They've adjusted the dampers inside of the ductwork. And when you go and you start messing around with the dampers, you actually throw off the balance of your home. And when we were developing some of our products, we didn't put dampers on there because, for a couple of different reasons. But we thought, let's create an apparatus that if you need to, we can sell an aftermarket piece to put dampers, but let's see how the market reacts. And everybody asks about dampers on those products to say, there's no dampers. Why not? I can't open and close the vent. And then I asked them, well, like, how often do you open and close your vent? And they say, well, like maybe once a year in the spring. Like, okay. And there's a damper inside the duct that you could do that. And then I tell them exactly this. If your HVAC specialist sees you doing that, they're not going to be happy because you're throwing off the balance that they've built. So, as consumers, we're used to like that. My point is, like, we're used to having that freedom of the damper, but not realizing that it has other implications, but it's just a comfort that we like to have. And so, yeah, I think, it's inevitable that there's going to be advances in technology in homes. And we want to be on the other side of that. So how can we start to design and prepare for those things? I don't know.
Well, listen, I love that. And that's actually the perfect place to leave this. Roberta, thank you so much for taking the time today. And if you want to learn more about our event, go to the show notes. There will be a link to the website. I love what you do. And I think it's fantastic. And thank you for the time. And tell Paolo I'm a fan.
I won't tell him that. His ego's going to get.
Is he sitting right there? Is he sitting right there?
Okay. No, he isn't. But I think it's funny enough. I think it's his anniversary with my mom because he just came by with a dozen roses and trying to get my attention. I'm like, I'm on doing something right now. Like, go away. No, it's awesome. I will definitely tell him. It's like for us to talk to people who get excited about this stuff. It's like this little club of, it's just so beautiful, and it really validates all the work that we're doing. So I get very excited by other people's excitement, and I appreciate you having me on here. This is great. Thank you.
We are living in a time of incredible growth, both technologically and creatively, with respect to interior design, exterior design, and architecture. There is no question. There are companies thinking differently about the business of design and how to make products super serve those for whom they're being made. One of those companies, and one of my favorites, is Moya Living. Designer and fabricators of some of the most stunningly beautiful, incredibly durable, and highly functional kitchen, bath, and outdoor kitchen cabinetry on the market today. Powder-coated steel with stunning lines, vibrant colors to fit any design style or aesthetic. A history of designing cabinetry for the scientific community, so it's been tested in some of the most harsh conditions available. Moya O'Neill is the CEO and founder of Moya Living. She's the inspiration behind the design. Designers, their specification process is so simple, it will make your job so much easier. Check them out online through the socials at Moya Living, their website, moyaliving.com, and in the real world, their live kitchen showroom in Fountain Valley, California.
You hear conversations about transformative design all the time on Convo by Design. We talk about it all the time. But what does that really mean? Design improves the lives of those who inhabit the space, but it also feeds the creativity and the soul of the creative. Are you looking for a way to give back? The Oasis Alliance is a 501c3 collective of creatives based in and around the Washington, D.C. area with a mission to provide healing spaces to those who are rebuilding, rehabilitating, and recovering. Have you wondered how to apply your design skills to uplift your community? It all starts with a desire and a willingness to share your gifts. Danielle Woodhouse-Johnson of the Oasis Alliance and her team are looking for guest designers, in-kind sponsors, and funding to make better the spaces and therefore the lives of everyday people who find themselves coming out of traumatic situations. Check out theoasisalliance.org for more information. Thanks for helping. Thank you, Roberta, for the time. Love this idea, love the company, and as a girl dad, love the family dynamic. Thank you to my partners and sponsors, Thermosol, Moya Living, Design Hardware. I truly appreciate the partnership, and thank you for listening, downloading, and subscribing to the podcast. Please make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss a single episode of the show the moment it's published. Please email me with suggestions and show ideas. Love the input. Email convobydesign@outlook.com and on Instagram @convobydesign with an X. Thanks for listening. Until next week, be well and take today first.